Welcome back, Commissioners, to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners Policy Session. Gary, would you please take it off?
Yes, thank you, Chair Smith. All commissioners are present except Commissioner Martha Schrader, who is attending a National Association of Counties event. Your policy session today is consideration of adoption of an order initiating formation of a joint water and sanitary authority. And this is for the Oak Lodge Water Services District. Jeff Munz from the Office of County Counsel will present. We have two board members from the Oak Lodge Water Services District, Ginny Van Leeuw and Mark Knutson. Thank you for being here. And several staff as well from the Oak Lodge Water Services District in the audience. I do want to recognize Sarah Jo Chaplin, the General Manager, is here. Thank you, Sarah Jo, and the rest of your team for being here. With that, Jeff, would you kick it off, please?
Yes, thank you. We're here for today in the policy session is consideration of the adoption of an order initiating formation of a joint water and sanitary authority for Oak Lodge Water Services. These are materials prepared by Oak Lodge and presented to our office to present, of course, to you in policy session. This is something that, after our discussions today, it's tentatively on the schedule for your business meeting next week for the consideration of this order in a public hearing. And if that's something the board chooses to adopt, then it would have a subsequent public hearing 30 to 50 days after that. It's a process outlined in the Boundary Procedures Act, or S 198, and it provides for this mechanism whereby the county under 198-835 can adopt this order and go through the process to create this joint water and sanitary authority. Currently, Oak Lodge Water Services operates in both of those areas as a district, and they are changing their formation through this process to an authority. Both are entities that have this authority to provide these services. The difference between them being that an authority is something that is a process by which a city could annex into an authority is different than a district, whereby the final decision being made by this body, the Board of County Commissioners, instead of through ORS 222, for the situations where a city is annexing into a district. So one of the major differences there. But beyond that, the services provided by the two different entities would be the same. So with that, I guess I would hand it off to the folks from Oak Lodge to talk more about their process and the reasons for doing this.
Okay, how we do this at our office is that usually one of us kick it off and the other one answers the question. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to talk to you about what we're up to, and Mark will be the person who will answer the questions at the end. Or if, while I'm talking, you have some questions, please feel free. So I started with good morning. Well, it's good afternoon now. Chair Smith, Vice Chair Savas, Commissioner Schrader is absent, Commissioner Shull, and Commissioner Fisher. My name is Ginny Van Leeuw, and I'm the Vice President and Secretary of Oak Lodge Water Services Board of Directors. With me today is Treasurer Mark Knutson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today and to share with you information and the position of the Oak Lodge Water Services Board on becoming an authority. First, let me say that Oak Lodge Water Services Board has been considering becoming an authority for some time. We've had many discussions regarding this issue. You should have before you information that goes back a couple of years showing timelines and the board's contact with the public and others regarding this change. Becoming a joint water and sanitary authority will protect our customers' investments. Reorganizing from a district to a joint water and sanitary authority under Oregon law will add greater certainty regarding the revenue base essential for planning long-term investments in infrastructure. This change will securely fix the district's boundaries so that customers will continue to receive reliable drinking water, wastewater, and watershed protection services at rates based solely on the cost of service and delivered through a utility governed by an elected board chosen by Oak Lodge Water Services customers. Oak Lodge Water Services' top priority is providing a reliable water services at affordable rates. We're committed to serving our customers, protecting public health, keeping our streams and rivers clean, and making smart investments and keeping our rates affordable. That's really kind of tough to do sometimes, but we're working at it. Continuity is essential to ensure consistent plans for addressing climate change and environmental protection. Oak Lodge Water Services uses efficient design to minimize energy use to move water, reduce our carbon footprint, and protect our natural environment. Investments in infrastructure will make our water and wastewater system more resilient to potential wildfires, earthquakes, flooding, and emergencies such as the December ice storm. Incredibly, during all these events, our staff and employees worked many hours to make sure our customers did not lose water and sanitary services. And that's a fact. I mean, they really went the extra mile. All these warming temperatures, La Nina predicted weather for this winter are all issues we must address as we plan. Becoming an authority will benefit our approximately 29,000 residents under any governance option. Even if part of the service area was annexed or incorporated, a joint water authority would continue to provide the same services and set rates by direction of a customer-elected board. Having a locally elected joint water and sanitary authority ensures our customers will continue to have reliable water services at affordable rates based solely on cost of service. Metro is currently funding a study of governance options in the Oak Lodge Water Services area. Some would like to incorporate a new city in part of Oak Lodge Water Services district area. Others have discussed annexation to Milwaukee of the Oak Grove portion of the Oak Lodge Water Services area. As I've mentioned previously, becoming a water and sanitary authority, we, the board, will continue to provide the same services at a reasonable rate with the same employees and staff. Virtually nothing changes except we go from a district to an authority. This request is the least costly way to do this change and is a beginning, not an end. We'd like to start the process. We are continuing our outreach, have no opposition so far, and would appreciate the County Board of Commissioners' consideration. We ask that you start the process today through the adoption of the presented board order and call for a public hearing at the county business meeting scheduled for October 21st. Thank you for your time today. And now we'll entertain questions.
Thank you for that. You know, you've reached out to me and called me and wanted to know the process, and I certainly didn't know the process, but I've learned a lot about it. And Jeffrey Mums has studied the applicable ORSs and our role in this. However, I have some concerns moving forward on this. Paul Gornick supplied us with some information, maybe on a timeline. I can't remember what the attachments were. And on Monday, I emailed him back and he says, "Hi, Paul, do you plan on any public hearings for the changes in the Oak Lodge Water District? I see the attached timeline for your outreach. It would be helpful." And he emailed me back, and he sends his regrets he couldn't be here today, or else he would. He's been on grand jury. Can't really say no to the grand jury, can we? So he couldn't be here today. And he says you've posted on your webpage, your Facebook, Twitter. And he has said that Oak Lodge is not planning on conducting supplemental formal hearings because it could create confusion about which entity is a formal decision maker, the county. But Oak Lodge will do whatever it takes to support the county as it holds hearings so they are meaningful public input. And then I circled around and talked to my county council about that statement, and it is somewhat correct in there. We also had a letter from somebody who I'm sure you're familiar with, Kent Squires, an email. Have you seen that email?
No.
Okay. He is in opposition to this, and he cites some reasons for that. I have also talked to our county council about his reasons, and I'm really not sure that what he's saying is 100% copacetic with what you want to do. Okay? I've also reviewed your timeline. You made an effort in 2018. There was an article. There was no efforts in 2019. You have 5 efforts, as I count them according to your timeline, 5 efforts in 2020. The rest of them are mostly from this fall about your outreach. And then you have planned outreach going forward. Now, I assume this planned outreach is going forward is while we're conducting the county hearings, while we're doing.
It would, if I could, it would largely be in, leading up to the hearings. So a lot of that outreach would include things like a first-class letter to all of our customers to let them know not only what the hearing schedule is, but provide additional information about the authority so that they could be in a position to comment at the public hearings.
So this is my concern, and it's a valid one, that enough people don't know what you're doing. I don't think your outreach has been conducive for this type of hearings going forward today. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're free to do that. Because this is what I foresee happening. I foresee that we put this up on the business meeting agenda, and it looks like the Board of Clackamas County Commissioners is the authority in the Oak Lodge, and that we're ramming this through. And then what's going to happen afterwards, we're going to get 1,000 emails into the accusing commissioners of doing X, Y, and Z, and it's not us. But by that point, the horse has already left the barn, so to speak, and you can't go back and fix what people already think. And there's another issue I think Mr. Savis is wanting to bring up about we discussed earlier. So I am hugely uncomfortable proceeding today and next Thursday with converting your district to an authority when, for instance, letters of notice have not been mailed to your account holders. I think that should have been done as a heads up, hey, we're thinking about doing this, not a letter stating that a public hearing is happening, because I think the situation might need to be nuanced. I understand that you're trying to protect your assets and your delivery service from being incorporated to a city, and that is very real. That is very real. I get that. But I would like to see a little bit more due diligence done on this. Now, I've said what I need to say for right now. I would entertain any comments from commissioners. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, good afternoon. I see that the cities of Milwaukee and Gladstone adopted a resolution providing formal consent to the formation of your joint water sanitary authority. And I had a question prior to the chair's comments about outreach, is what is your feeling for public sentiment at this time? Is it mostly positive or negative? And the third thing is, if you become an authority, what do you foresee as the added administrative organization that would be required to administer the authority over the district?
Sure. If I could.
Yes, go ahead.
So a couple of thoughts. First of all, in terms of Milwaukee and Gladstone, and this ties back to the question and the concerns related to outreach. What we had is largely what I would characterize as a chicken and egg problem, because under statute, the cities that we serve, specifically parts of Milwaukee and Gladstone, have the essentially veto authority under statute to be able to say yes or no that it makes sense for an authority to serve a portion of their citizens. And so in order for us to understand what the boundaries of the proposed authority would be, we needed to work with the cities to understand if we would have their support going forward. Mm-hmm. We only got that support last month. And so that's why, obviously, there's a lot of concerted effort in the last couple of months related to what is an authority, because frankly, we didn't know what boundary we were going to have. We didn't know if we had a viable alternative going forward. And so we didn't want to create a lot of concern related to a proposal that may or may not be viable going forward. And so that's kind of what drove an awful lot of the timing associated with the outreach, was working with the cities to get their concurrence. And so again, I appreciate and respect what it is you're saying. That's kind of how we ended up in that position. Ultimately, with I attended the Milwaukee public hearing, and their fundamental concern was one of, does this affect the viability of potential incorporation or annexation of some or all of our service area? And to that end, we have worked closely with the Oak Lodge Governance Project. I'm not sure if you're familiar with their work, but basically they've been doing the metro study that Jenny had talked about. And their analysis, their own data basically shows that they have viable alternatives without including Oak Lodge Water Services service as part of the portfolio of either an annexed or a new city.
And what is their viable alternative? Are they going to build their own water plant?
No. So what they would do is either annex or incorporate, either as a annexation to Milwaukee or Gladstone, or create a new city in that service area. But their plan would be to continue to have Oak Lodge Water Services as the water, wastewater, and stormwater watershed management service provider. And so it would continue to be a sort of mutually coexist in terms of working together to meet the needs of the community. They would provide the city services, and we would continue to provide water, wastewater, and stormwater services. So I think that's the Milwaukee. I'm sorry for the long explanation, but I think it's really important stuff. In terms of support or feedback, the letter that you referenced from Kent Squires is the first negative feedback that we've heard. Beyond that, and again, it's sort of reflected in this list of 20 different outreach activities. We have, we received public testimony at our meeting. We had a motion by the board to consider moving forward with the proposals that we've had. We received no negative feedback from any of those actions, and in fact have been encouraged on multiple times from members of the community to move forward with this effort. So feel like there has been positive feedback, and we really haven't had an opportunity to dig into this, and certainly our attorney is going to be working with our general manager to figure out an appropriate response to his concerns. And again, I've just scanned the letter, but they're pretty serious allegations, and so we want to really understand what's going on and how much validity there is there. And then you asked one other really important question, which was, is there additional administrative effort associated with this? And the answer is none at all. And so, again, it is the exact same services in the exact same service area with the exact same staff and the exact same facilities. Part of this proposal of creating an authority would require an election of the board. And so we have a board now, but we would dissolve the district, and so we need to create a new board. At least some, if not all, of the members of the board would run for positions on that new authority board. But other than that, everything is the same. It all gets transferred over to the authority, and there is really no additional administration associated with that effort.
And so to the ratepayers, rates would remain the same and not go up?
Rates would remain as they are set by the board. And so right now we don't foresee significant additional costs associated with this transition. There will be some, things like some of the real estate has to be retitled and new deeds. And so I'm not going to say there are no costs, there are some costs, but they're very minor compared to the ongoing operations and maintenance of the organization.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I think maybe the first thing I should do is kind of disclose my history with the district, and so forth. So I got on the budget committee, I believe, in 1998, the Oak Lodge Water District, and I was appointed to fill a vacancy created by Mr. Knudsen, resigning at the time due to a ill member of his family, your daughter. Hope she's doing well. Katie?
She's doing very fine, thank you.
Yep. And so I was on the board for 4 years, and then 2 years into that 4-year term, I ran for Oak Lodge Sanitary District, and I served there until I submitted my resignation after becoming a county commissioner in 2011. So I know this, I know these folks pretty well, and I know the circumstances pretty well. And in that period of time, I was on the budget committee is when the authority, Sunrise Water Authority, was being formed. And I watched that with high interest, learning. And I did see Mr. Squire's letter. Some of that, I think there's some validity to some of what's in there, and I think that there's some experiences, some of the Portland Water Bureau members, not board, but people in City of Portland can probably say, well, actually, there's some shining examples of why there should be some protections for districts, authorities, and so on. So with that said, as I watched the rationale for becoming an authority as posed by then Damascus Water, Sunrise Water, not Sunrise Water, but Mount Scott Water, Damascus Water, and the city of Happy Valley at the time, was the great investment they were to make and the holistic effort or goal to increase capacity for this huge growing area within mind, Senate Bill 100, within mind all those, how service delivery is provided in the urban areas. So, that was the mission. They were to make significant investment and bond and debt, go into debt to provide all those services and so on. And when I was on the board, we made an effort to create an authority by merging with CRW at the time. And that was, and the validity in there is, okay, you're merging. There was another holistic thing of providing, again, water services, water rights, combining all that for the greater community. So unfortunately, that failed. That effort failed. Outvoted by the board at the time. That didn't materialize. So here we are today, and I think my recollection of the legislative intent, which is pretty similar to I think what Mr. Squires is kind of conveying, which I shared with actually Ginny Van Loo, unknowingly that this letter would come. But when you and I talked 3 weeks ago about this, right. I said, okay, great. I saw it coming up on the agenda. That you submitted a request, so tell me how you're doing and what the progress report is. So not unlike my colleagues sharing their concerns about, number one, public outreach, and how you doing on that, what's the plan for it. I really see your request to us as twofold. Number one, allowing the district to become an authority, and the question is, what's the compelling reason? And number two is that the mechanism I think you're asking for is one where the board would, or the boundary commission of the board, the county commission, would actually do it versus putting it on the ballot. So there's really two questions there, both of which I think need public outreach, frankly. And when I saw the board packet, which is finally included, I called up Ginny again and we spoke on Sunday for a good hour about this. And then I believe the letter from Mr. Squire showed up yesterday, I believe. I'm not sure. And so with that all said, I want to get back to the why. What is the compelling reason that to do this? Why would it be granted for Oak Lodge Water Services and perhaps not for CRW or for any other district, any other county for any other reason? And I don't, and the legislative intent was not, I don't think, annexation protection in and of itself. It was really for the greater mission that they were taking on beyond what an ORS district, whereas 222 or 198 in that structure would do. So a lot of technical stuff that I think some of us in this room understand and so forth. So I thought, and I shared with Jenny here 3 weeks ago, and then again on Sunday, I thought that one of the greatest needs, I think, and frankly, something that I've been very passionate about when I was on the district board was, we've got a very, in the district, I live in the district, I'm a ratepayer. I believe we have a great opportunity and a unique opportunity where we have, 5, 6, 7 watersheds running through our territory?
Yeah.
Surface water's been very important to me. Watershed stewardship's been very important to me. And we are all co-permittees with MS4 permit and NIPID's permit, but in particular, MS4, what does that stand for? Municipal Separate Storm and Sanitary. Yeah. So, storm. So, that relationship between storm and watershed, I think, is our opportunity to say, hey, we do have a holistic vision, if that's the will of the board, if that's the will of the district, to say we could take that on as a mission. I know it's been something that when I've gone door to door in the district, in that area, a lot of people had concerns about flooding and all these kinds of things. We know we talked about that. I know that sometimes it's a touchy subject and it gets complicated, and there's not a lot of resources there. There were, back when I was on the board, separate budgets, separate revenue stream coming in, separate, and that was budgeted separately. I imagine it may still be the same way today. But I really thought that we could and should, and I still do, believe that we should all do more. And when I say we, I'm talking about the district, I'm talking about the county in its role as WES, and really far as the region. And with all the infill that's anticipated, and we're built out, but we know there's more infill coming. There's going to be more impervious surfaces. There's going to be more issues with flooding. There already are a number of areas that under every huge storm we get where we've got flooding. So I think that might be the mechanism to maybe get to the point to where we got a compelling reason to answer the question of why an authority versus the status quo. I don't think the intent is to be, I'm just guessing from my memory of Sunrise Water Authority's attempt. I don't think the legislative intent was to become an authority and this is business as usual. Mm-hmm. Right, go from a district to an authority, doing business as usual. There needs to be something more substantial that's a delivery or a need or a calling. And that's my 2 cents for today. I'm excited. I'm an advocate for it becoming an authority for a number of reasons. And I think the history of the city of Portland funds, Mark, you know this. Yeah. I think that there has to be, in my opinion, I think there's got to be separation because sometimes I think cities have taken advantage of rate revenue, and that money has seemed to leak into other departments, and that worries me. So
doesn't seem to, it does.
Okay.
So if I could, because you've made some really excellent points, and they actually dovetail extremely well with our thinking, and so. We haven't had a chance to really sort of clarify some of these points, so let me take a first crack, and our elite team can tell me what I meant to say here in just a minute. But so in terms of the question of why, and that really is the critical question, a couple of things. First of all, last year we completed our water system master plan. And the drinking water system master plan, and that drinking water system master plan identified substantial needs for investments, and it's largely because of the age of our distribution system coupled with things like seismic resiliency that suggest that very large capital investments are now due, that these are investments that are essentially generational in nature, that we've been living off of the investments that were made by, in many cases, our parents and our grandparents in that water system, and now it's come due to update those investments, and that's documented in our water system master plan. And I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but Jason, our staff engineer, can give us the lowdown. But we're talking millions and millions of dollars of capital investments to renew, replace, and improve the resiliency of our existing infrastructure. And that's just on the drinking water side. And so then we've got the wastewater side, and the good news is that that, the investments were made in the plant about 10 or 12 years ago, and it's performed admirably over the years. We've done a great job of treating the wastewater and maintaining that plant. But the collection system is probably even in a greater state of disrepair and in need of maintenance. And that's very troubling because, again, after a big earthquake, the public health and sanitation associated with a wastewater collection system is going to be vital. And so we see, and so we are committed to moving forward. In fact, it's going on now, a wastewater system master plan to look at a similar kind of capital improvement program associated with those improvements. But we know the bill is going to be substantial. And so largely as was the case of Sunrise, we are seeing down the road the need for these very substantial capital investments on drinking water and wastewater. And so we're trying to get in front of it as opposed to waiting until the bills start to come due. And that's, to me, the value of that long-term planning. And that said, concurrent with all of those current conversations is this discussion by the Oak Lodge Governance Group, stimulated and funded in part by Metro, that suddenly annexation and incorporation of that service area could become a very viable alternative. Particularly annexation is very troubling because exactly as was the case in Sunrise, we could be in a situation where we're making these large capital investments to meet the long-term needs of our citizens, and cities wind up withdrawing those assets to become part of the new city. And the nature of these investments are you can't just take a piece out, it's very challenging. And so that's why to do effective future planning and provide the kind of resiliency and service that's needed, we really have to understand what that boundary is so that we can plan for those needs accordingly. So now I want to circle back to the stormwater issue because I think probably, I totally agree with you, Commissioner. I think it, more than even water and wastewater, really makes the case for the need for the authority, because while we currently have a cooperative working relationship with the county on stormwater management issues, we are really challenged by the fact that there, and I know you and I have sort of talked around this issue, there are not bright lines in terms of responsibilities associated with who does what under the existing memorandum of understanding we have with the county. And so the county owns the pipes and the infrastructure for the most part, and the district is responsible for the water quality side of that. But water quantity and water quality, when it comes to stormwater, essentially frequently get conflated. They affect each other very directly. And to that end, we have to work together to be able to understand how we're going to make those future investments in stormwater. Stormwater is obviously by its very nature gravity-driven. And so we really need to understand exactly what our basin is going to be in order to be able to plan for the future improvements that are needed. To that end, we think it makes a lot of sense to not only, in my mind, revisit that memorandum of understanding and tighten it up and provide some clarity in terms of those responsibilities, but also essentially generate what I would call a master plan for stormwater services to set sort of a long-term goal of how we address quality and quantity issues together. Because if we don't do that, those two steps, we're essentially just doing one-off solutions to meet the most immediate need and not providing the best long-term value for our customers. And so that, to me, is exactly why an authority makes sense, because it gives us the certainty that we need to know what our service area is going to be, what our customer base is going to be, and ultimately what our revenue base is going to be, so that we can work with the county to be in a position to develop that cooperative agreement, to develop that long-term investment plan, and then ultimately move forward with a strategic set of investments to manage stormwater effectively in the long term. So that's how we see the authority really leading up to a comprehensive stormwater solution in our service area.
Yeah. If I may, just quickly, and I don't want to belabor the discussion, but it's a good discussion, and that is that, appreciate your response. It struck me when I saw, and I haven't reviewed the entire Oak Lodge governance thing, but I noticed, that there's a few lines down, and on one page, it's got stormwater.
Yeah.
Stormwater, and I'm thinking, that's our job.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the city or a future city's job. And I say our, I'm talking about county, Wes, Wes as a stormwater, surface water group, and Oak Lodge Water in your territory, with adoption. I think that's our role. And granted, somewhere in there is the DTD.
Right.
And I think that what we own, the roads and so forth, has always been, I thought, the responsibility that I certainly back then, and I always felt that the relationship should be and was, and attitudes toward each other then, when I was on the board, in your shoes, a good one with the county at the time. And so, in my dual role for a while there, I was trying to really build that bridge in early 2011 and 12 and 13 between the district and the county, and hoping, we had the Walta Vista, the number of things that were happening with the Boardman drainage basin and so forth. And I appreciate the investment that the district's made in the wetlands project, so thank you for that. That's a huge step. But I'm not so much worried about, I think we can get an agreement, a better agreement with the county and DTD and everyone else. I think it's really about what we do to meet some of those needs as if climate change is having the impact it's having.
Very real, yeah.
These flooding issues are only going to get worse.
Yep.
And they're not going to get better. And I think it's going to be, if we don't do it, we're going to be forced to, by virtue of DEQ or someone telling us in our MS4 capacity that you have to do it. So what I've learned is that being proactive and working with DEQ and taking the steps and building it in your plan and building it in the document, your master, whatever you're going to do, goes a long ways towards them, not bearing down and being more aggressive than they already are.
I agree, and again, it really starts with having that plan, understanding our partnership relationship, and then developing a plan so that we can make strategic investments rather than just reactive investments.
So,
Well, and if I could just say a little bit here. I spent a lot of years working for the state and the county, and stormwater, surface water, natural resources are my deal. They've always been my deal. And I really am concerned about where we live and what's happening to all that. And I believe in my heart that we can do a better job of this district and the county working together to get somewhere here. It's just a constant, it seems like it's a hamster wheel that just keeps going around and around and around, and I think it's time for that to stop. I think that knowing our boundaries is part of that issue that we need to get to, but on the other hand, I'm willing to work, and I know the district is willing to work at whatever it takes to get us all together. We have partners sitting out there that need to work with both of us, the Soil and Water Conservation District and many of the watershed councils. We should all be working in this realm, and I think that I, for one, on the board, and I'm sure my other members of the board would be up for it as well, but I'd like to see something happen in that area because I don't think we're getting there now.
if I could, I don't disagree with anything you said, Jenny. As you know, I'm very pro-natural resource, but that's not the issue here today. That's not how I view it. I don't know if you folks are aware, but we've had some zone changes and land use hearings that will increase building along our commercial areas and the McLaughlin corridor that allows for increased housing units up to 60 units per acre in commercial zones.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount of growth in this area. I'm not sure how far the rest of it reaches out, but I'm looking at the map in your boundary areas, and within your boundary areas, there are huge issues with stormwater
Right.
that are not being addressed. And from what I heard from Mr. Knutson today was There are no bright lines for infrastructure rain runoff. You said there
Yeah,
were no bright lines for the infrastructure improvements for rain runoff. Now, I've been out visiting some folks who have residences who are so frustrated because their houses are flooding when it rains. And it was probably way back when builders didn't do it right, whenever 30 or 40 years ago when these homes were built, you know. But nevertheless, we're stuck with the problem now.
Right.
The county roads isn't your problem. I'm going to tell you that right now. Our road department will do what we tell them to do. But what I don't see a willingness on your district's part is to adequately address the storm, rain, flooding that happens multiple times. And I need some assurances moving forward for you to say that, oh, it's the county of Wes's responsibility. We're not in that boundary. And for us to say, Wes, it's totally theirs, well, we can't do anything if you own it.
Right.
So until that issue is addressed, I am not willing to schedule a hearing.
Okay.
So I want to plan from you guys how we're going to address the storms and the flooding that happens to hundreds of people out there.
That's a fact.
And it's going to cost. And those people aren't going to get that service for free. I know that. But you need to have a very proactive plan for that. And secondly, I do not see adequate outreach. I do think that you need to notify every single one of your residents with a notice in their bills or a mailer to their addresses saying, this is what we are thinking, not saying, oh, the Board of County Commissioners is going to have a hearing and approve this, because I do not want that dumped on this particular Board of County Commissions when it's not our action. We're just merely complying with the ORSs. I am very much willing to move forward with this authority. However, there's really strategic and structural questions that have not been answered to my satisfaction on how we're going to do this. And Jenny, and I probably owe you an apology, you called me up, I don't know, a couple months ago and said, we want to change from a district to authority. Are there any problems? And I says, well, I don't know, are there? Because I had not been presented with anything.
Right.
But you don't know what you don't know until you get into it.
Right.
And so we have had situations where quite possibly this county could be sued for not providing storm runoff. But we would have to defend ourselves from what? We don't have the authority to provide it if we wanted to. So I think these issues need to be addressed. I would like to see some real efforts substantiated with data on your outreach before we have some hearings scheduled, but I think we're going to have to postpone those until we hear from some more people in the area, or we don't hear from people. You know, if we don't hear from anybody, that would be great. We'll go ahead and move forward. I am not inclined to put it to a vote because I think it would be at this point, but I don't know what I don't know. If we get a huge amount of people in here saying, oh, don't do this, you know, if we get an occasional letter from him, yeah, and maybe, you know, one or two other people, that's quite different. But I am willing to entertain, however, an informational hearing for your people to come forward with the possibility, and I know that seems like a lot of redundant work, but I think you folks have such passion and such zeal to making this happen that there's no rush for us, first of all. There's no rush. Nobody's going to form a city out there with next year or the year after. You know, that's just. But I do want to see this happen. But I do think we need to take some time because I know some folks that live in the area, not as well as Paul does. He lives out there. But I'm concerned about one faction over here, and I'm concerned about one faction over here regarding the formation of a city. I don't know what I don't know what the majority of the people think out there. I have no idea what the majority of the people think, but I do know one thing. People want to be able to turn on their water and get a glass of water and flush the toilets.
Yep.
Okay?
For sure.
And that's really the basics that we need to be looking at. But in today's age, that comes with a cost. And so, Commissioner Savas, go ahead.
Yeah, I concur with Commissioner Smith on the issue of the outreach, and whatever you all think is the best thing that doesn't confuse your base. Like if we hold a hearing and you guys are, that might, whatever you guys think, it might be confusing. I don't want the base to be confused, and I'm supportive of navigating to get to the finish line on this. And it's just about matter of just being strategic in how we do it and making sure we got people informed, and happy to help in any way I can.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, I just want to, my colleagues probably already realize this, we have two hats here today. One, the county, three hats, county in the role of doing this, the boundary, four hats, the Boundary Commission, DTD, and of course, WES. So we're, I want to be a partner in any of those capacities we can, because I really think that we can do a better job in stewardship, and we get some unique opportunities when it comes to the natural resource that's the most vital thing on this planet, and that's water. So,
Okay.
and in every form, I think we got a great challenge in front of us, and I'm excited about.
Super, thank you.
So we have the issue of sewer, we have drinking water, and we have storm flooding to deal with. And in your mailers, I would like you to see certain information put in the mailers in your bills, and that is what your plan is and why, that the Board of County Commissioners are the authority in facilitating the decision,
I like that.
and the contact information goes to you guys. And I don't really want to see any law being made to us yet on a yea or nay decision without more due diligence being done. I mean, we'll listen to anybody, of course, but what we're going to do is we're going to just refer them to you right now. Because, I'm looking at your outreach, and you have done, I think some good outreach, considering you're unincorporated.
Right.
I really do. But every single payer needs to be notified once, if not at least twice. Because a lot of times you get stuff in the bill, it goes in the round file, and I'm guilty of that.
There's a lot of people guilty of that.
We know that happens a lot.
And I'm guilty of that myself. And then they're going to come back and say you send them 2 mailers. Well, I didn't know that was happening, and we always deal with that. So, Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith, and thank you for being here today. This is an issue that I am not familiar with in my work, in my background as a commissioner, as a lawyer, in human services. This is new for me. So while I've been sitting here, I've been reading statutes, I've been looking at the difference between a district and an authority and trying to capture it all, and what are we doing here and why. And after this, and I did listen while I was reading, I don't know why it's important to form a joint authority in the midst of the pressures of possible annexations and forming a city. It's basic stuff. Why is it so important? How does creating an authority protect the infrastructure that's been built and the assets that you currently have? Make it very, very simple, because if I'm, with all my background and reading all this and listening to you, if I don't sit here and know why we're sitting here today, it's going to be an issue in communicating to the public as well.
Well, that's one of my thoughts on communication too, is we're talking to people that don't have any idea what any of this is about.
Yep.
They just know they turn on the faucet and they get water and they flush the toilet and it goes away. That's what they know. And so this is a hard issue. It's tough. And I tend to, when we get things like this, just try it out on a couple of my neighbors who I know don't know any of this. And amazingly, a little time spent and they understand what has to happen in order to protect their assets is basically what we're
Yeah.
looking at. Those ratepayers have paid for their sewer and water treatment facilities, all of it. And to have someone just come in from the side and form a city or whatever and take it away, it's not what we'd like to see. Not that they are or will, but, just, it's a protection.
Yeah, so just all about that, like, what are the risks? What's important here? What are the probabilities? And why is it important to go with this legal type of entity? What does this give you that a district doesn't? And it's just that basic stuff. That's what I was looking for. I was looking through the materials, like read them and studying. It's like, why? Why do we have to do this? I don't know why. And I'm really looking forward to having a deeper understanding. And I'll do my homework deeper before this comes back to us.
Yeah,
Since
will
I
do.
did not serve on a water district on the Oak Lodge. So your conversation, as fascinating as it was hard for me to follow.
Thank you very much for that. I agree with Commissioner Fisher on that, too. Two other points I wanted to make, I forgot. You have outstanding bond indebtedness.
On the plant, yes.
Okay, that needs to be addressed. I'm certain that will carry on. Future bond indebtedness, because there's no way you're going to pay for this without it. That means increased to ratepayers. That is a reality.
Yep.
And those realities need to be addressed. And while you're addressing those realities, maybe some education would be important. Is the federal government used to pay for our sewers and our waters?
Right.
And how many years ago did they just quit doing that? And what has happened is they may have built our sewer systems in town A, and then now that sewer system is 30 and 40 years old and needs upgraded, and the federal government isn't there to help us with
Right.
that anymore. So now it's incumbent upon us to do it. And so that's, I think, part of your education as well. Gary?
So what I'm hearing, commissioners, is you are not going to go forward on scheduling a first reading yet, that the Oak Lodge District has an opportunity to do a bit more outreach, and county staff will assist you if you'd like any help with that at all, and to discuss whether you're going to do a potentially informational public hearing first, or if you're going to ask the county to do that. We can work that out at the staff level and come back to you, commissioners. But what I am hearing, though, is you are not, at this time, moving forward on a first public hearing.
Correct, we are not. The one that's been scheduled for this Thursday, nor the other one that's been scheduled for November, and then a subsequent hearing. When we get to a decision point, we will have two public hearings. I've insisted on that. Yeah, we could slam bam, thank you, ma'am, on this, but we're not going to do that.
Okay.
We're going to give the public every opportunity possible to weigh in on this. Did you have a question?
Yeah, just one thing, and I'm all for the rate protection, I'm all for, the benefits of the boundary protection to make sure that the indebtedness is secure and the payers are the payers and the benefiters are not getting a free ride or getting annexed out of the debt. And I think there's some other mechanisms. But knowing that some of these challenges we have, whether it's the existing infrastructure or infrastructure we need to offer, I think that, or studying the whole thing from a stormwater standpoint, a surface water standpoint, I think the way to do that affordably, most affordably, is by working together. The districts, the county, the WES, and finding a way. And even if that's looking at it holistically as a study, that by doing that together, I think we can make it more affordable for everyone to get there. But I want to make sure we find a way, and I don't want this to die. I want to make sure we keep this going, keep this hot, and keep it going. So
I do too, and I don't know how soon you think you can provide us with that information, but as soon as you do, and you can make a decision whether we just want a plain informational hearing at our business meeting. I don't know, Gary, whether appropriate before we go into the formal hearings. I think it really does need to be nuanced, because when you get down to the brass tacks, people, this is political.
Right.
Yeah.
It is pure and simple political. I don't care how you're going to paint it. So we have to address the political nuances of this. Yes, Jeff?
I'm just going to add, there are some pretty precise requirements under the statute for how you hold the hearings. But there's nothing that would preclude holding a discussion item as part of your business meeting prior to consideration of an order.
Thank you for that. That's good to know. And you can keep us apprised of
course.
being legal on this. Thank you, Jeff. Yes.
So if I could try to summarize from our side and sort of extend that, on that outreach side, obviously, we're going to do more outreach. I would offer that we would have our staff work with the county administrator to sort of develop a proposal. I mean, far be it from us to figure that out, but but we can come up with some proposals. One of the things that really appealed to me was, can we do it with data? And so I think part of that process, I'll be looking for how we can generate some data that hopefully you would find compelling in terms of the feedback that we can obtain. That sort of, to me, speaks to maybe a separate informational meeting that we have within our service area, but again, we can bring that information forward. And then, of course, be doing additional outreach in terms of contacting our customers.
Yes.
Really getting to the why. I think that's a wonderful question, and we can boil that down in a way that is hopefully very understandable. And we have some excellent communication people on staff
Oh,
and
good.
available to us. And so, and again, I appreciate the offer from Gary, and we'll work together on this. The piece that I found very intriguing was Commissioner Savas' suggestion, and start talking about stormwater. And so I don't know exactly what that looks like, but again, I want to extend from at least our board's perspective that we share that concern. We want to find ways to move forward. We want to address the sort of ambiguities that currently exist in that relationship and provide some clarity so that we're both prepared to step forward and make the commitments that need to be made to serve the community. Because absolutely, as we've discussed, it's a growing issue, and we need to be prepared in the future to be
And I
able to
am
address
concerned about the actions that this board is taking on additional changes in our land use and our ZDOs that will add more housing to the area, and you need to look at that too for the future, very much
Yeah.
so.
Yep, there's a lot going on, that's for sure.
There's a lot going on. You know, I don't know whether it's going to come to fruition or not, but we're allowing a change, which is a big change. Some of the land use decisions that we're making, I want you to be very mindful of this, is generational.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is absolutely generational in our land use changes. And so therefore, we need the infrastructure to keep up with those decisions. And part of that is a very important role that your authority will be playing in that.
So we
Any
had
other?
a wonderful wrap-up statement. I'm not going to deliver it only in as much as we kind of came at this a little differently, but I really sincerely want to thank you for both your consideration, your feedback, your guidance on this issue, and we're committed to continue to work forward in a collaborative way to move this issue forward, and look forward to being back in front of you and being in a position to move it forward.
Oh, I do too. I think that you have a willingness here on our, we just need to go about it a certain way. Commissioner Savas, do you have a statement?
Just one, I just realized, I forgot to mention, we have one big property owner that's not, in jurisdiction that's really not part of this conversation today. It needs to be. And if you need any help with them, I will. And that's ODOT.
Yeah.
They own a substantial amount of land, a lot of impervious surface, and a lot of drainage. That's
Who was that, Paul?
ODOT,
ODOT.
ODOT, yeah.
Yeah. So if you need help there, I can help you there too.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Where
Well,
were we
if-
20 years ago when we started?
We'll
the
hold
board?
you to that, just be careful.
Oh, yeah, and so we want to make sure that you're successful in this. I don't want to see you gobbled up by a city, and then they start picking apart, siphoning off your rates for other projects. I think that's a real consideration, too.
We
So-
appreciate your time and your willingness to work with us, because we really need to get into this and get moving.
Okay, Jenny.
Thank you.
All righty, and thank you for
Thanks.
coming. With that, this meeting is adjourned.